My name is Donald Campbell. I'm the chair of this board. And as we start, I would like to ask the board members to please introduce themselves, starting with you, Bruce.
Good evening, everybody. Bruce Lee Clark.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jean Connor.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Jenkins.
Good evening, this is Jim Carroll.
Hi, happy holidays, Sarah Perrin.
And also with us tonight, we have our town manager, Stuart Hurd, who's looking very natty tonight. And
thank you.
I would say Dan Monks, our assistant town manager, somewhat less natty, but nevertheless here with us, and that's all that really matters tonight. So thank you for being here. Before we start the meeting, I need to read this piece of business, which is that due to the COVID-19 pandemic state of emergency declared by Governor Scott and pursuant to Addendum 6, Executive Order 1-20 Act 92, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. There is no physical location to attend this meeting. However, the public may view it on CAT TV and call in at 1-646-558-8656. That's 646-558-8656. And enter the meeting ID 894-4339-6797. Again, that's a meeting ID 894-4339-6797. If technology fails us, the meeting will be continued at a time and place to be determined. All votes that are not unanimous will be done with a roll call vote in accordance with law. So if you are calling in for citizens' comment, I suggest you call in now for public comment. We have a consent agenda to go through first, but we will look at about 6:05. Just a couple minutes, 6:08 or so. We will be looking for citizens in the waiting room. But first, let's do the consent agenda. This is the minutes of November 23rd and December 8th, and the warrants as circulated. I know it is our custom for everybody to ask Stuart questions on the warrants ahead of the meeting, but if you've not had a chance to do that, now would be the time to bring up your questions with him and any concerns or notes for Nancy Lively on the minutes. For the purposes of discussion, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Bruce. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Okay, so thank you. So we are now looking for any discussion on the consent agenda. Seeing none. Oh, Jeannie has her hand up.
Yeah, I apologize, Stu. I meant to call you today. Can someone just explain what the MSK charges are on page 8? It's 324326, MSK Engineering and Design. Is it? I didn't know if this was just a collection of things that MSK had done over time. And if you don't know, I can check in with you tomorrow.
No, just a second. What was the number again?
324326. It's
Yeah,
MSK Engineering.
Yeah, they are all, we are attempting to receive a site management action closed letter called a SMAC letter from the state on the Cobra Drive landfill. State's requiring us to do a survey of the landfill site.
Okay.
That's one of the charges that is covered there. The others are the jelly pit remediation, which is the Furnace Brook former landfill site. We're doing some Roaring Branch sediment removal, and we needed engineering services for that. The Morgan Spring relocation design is included in that, as well as a power line project that is a water department project having to do with our tank beyond SVC.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't ask earlier.
That's okay.
Other questions for the town manager or notes for the secretary on the minutes? Seeing none, I'd ask you to please unmute yourselves. And all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, consent agenda passes. Thank you very much. So we are going to move into public comment. We have a, let me throw up this call-in information again. If you want to join our meeting for public comment, the number to dial is 646-558-8656. And the meeting ID is 894-4339-6797. So there's there are a number of people in our waiting room that are getting ready to present to us on the Silk Road conceptual plan, but there's one name I don't recognize. So I'm going to admit one name here, Eric Atkins. I don't know, are you part of the presentation on the Silk Road conceptual plans, or are you here for citizens comment? Welcome either way, but what have you got for us tonight? Person calling in as Eric Atkins, if you press *6, that will unmute your, there you go.
Hi, my name is Eric Atkins from Green International Affiliates. We're presenting for the roundabout.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'm sorry I didn't have everyone's name. So Eric, I'll just leave you in.
Yep.
We're about to enter a number of people that are going to co-present with you. So
yep.
Thank you
very
being
much.
here tonight.
Thank you.
So I don't see anybody else for citizens comment. It is 6:10 just about. I usually like to leave the first 5 minutes between 6:05 and 6:10 to make sure that nobody's calling in. It seems that nobody has called in, so I'm going to close public comment and we're going to move on to item 3. If you give me just a minute, I'm going to admit a number of people, and I'm not sure who would like to introduce this, but Dan, why don't you at least give us just the overview of what we're looking at here tonight, if you would, please.
Sure. Okay. Hello, everyone. As you folks know, the VTrans is in the process of developing a design for a roundabout at the Silk Road and Bennington College intersection. They have now done their preliminary design. Well, I guess it's conceptual design. You guys can correct me. But they wanted, we had talked to them earlier about choosing a preferred alternative, which the select board did. And based on that preferred alternative, these folks have put together a conceptual design, and they're here this evening to present that to everyone. I think most of you have seen the materials they're going to present tonight. It's quite impressive. And so look forward to an interesting discussion on this much needed improvement to that intersection at Silk Road and Bennington College. So I'll let these folks take it from here.
Thanks, Dan. You actually pretty much did my whole entire intro for me. So thank you for that. For those who don't remember me, I'm Michael LaCroix. I'm project manager for VTrans. I was here in front of you guys about a year ago presenting on that final scoping study. Tonight, you're going to see the evolution of what that scoping study has turned into in terms of an actual design. This is our conceptual design. And so we're here to show you what that design has evolved into and take any sort of comments or feedback you might have. Tonight, I'm here with a few gentlemen from Green International. They are an engineering firm that VTrans hired to perform the design. They've done an excellent job so far. We're really proud of what we're going to show you tonight. So I believe I have Dennis and Eric, Jason and Wing and Steve, I believe. And if I'm forgetting anybody else, I apologize. Dennis is going to kind of lead the presentation to you guys tonight. And the only thing I guess I'd ask is if you just hold off on questions till the end, it might make it a little more palatable, in terms of organization. So with that said, turn it over to Dennis. Thank you again.
All right, thank you, Mike. So can everyone see the screen that I've shared?
Yes.
Just want to make sure that everyone can see it. Obviously, with all the virtual, you guys have been doing this a lot lately. We've been doing a fair bit of it ourselves. Every now and again, you'll get a lag or something else that will happen, so if that happens, please just interrupt us, let us know that you can't see the screen or you can't hear us, and we'll repeat the last section so that, we don't leave anyone behind. What you see on the screen here is the title page of the PowerPoint presentation, and as has been introduced, this is the Bennington project that we are currently working on with VTrans. And we're here with Mike, who is the project manager, and today we'll be presenting, I will be presenting along with Jason Govin. I am the project engineer at Green International. We've been working with VTrans for about 25 years. We're located in Westford, Mass, which is the northern part of Massachusetts, and we've been working with VTrans for many years, including with Mike as the project manager on a few other projects. And I'm the project engineer. Jason, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure. As you can see on the screen, well, I'm Jason Govin. I will be taking the lead from the traffic design aspects of this project. I've been with Green for about 6 years now. We've worked on several projects with VTrans throughout my time, in addition to, a few of them being roundabout projects. So, but this one is unique, as it is at the peanut roundabout configuration that we'll get into later. So excited to be working on this project with you guys and present what we've done so far.
Thanks, Jason. So today we'll talk about the purpose and need of the project. We'll also talk about a brief overview of the existing conditions that are out there today. We'll talk about the conceptual design that we've submitted to VTrans. We'll talk about some of the project costs and the current status and anticipated schedule. And like Mike said, we'll have some opportunity at the end to answer any questions, go over any slides or anything like that that you have at the end. Now, one of the first things we did when we started this project was we reviewed the overall purpose and scope of this job. We reviewed the scoping study that was done with the town and with the school, and we made sure that we've had a good understanding of what the goals of this project were. So we've outlined them here. Primary goal is to improve the overall safety of this intersection with all the multiple side roads that come into this one location. We wanted to also reduce the speeds along Vermont 67A. We wanted to improve sight distance along this intersection. And not only that, but we wanted to accommodate bicycles, pedestrians, and vehicles. We know that there's a lot of bicycles in this area, a lot of pedestrians in this area. And so we want to make sure that the design that we propose accounts for all of those users of this area. Now, what you can see here on the screen, can everyone see my mouse as I point to different things? Okay, great, great. So the red lines are the state right-of-way lines and the town right-of-way lines. You can see here, north is facing up in this image. This is an intersection you're all probably very familiar with. We've got Madison Road here, College Drive in the top side of the sheet, and Silk Road down at the bottom. And we've got Vermont Route 67A coming in from east to west. Now, you also have blue lines here on the plans. Those represent the property lines of some of the private properties in this area as well. And you can see the shared use path kind of is this gray line that comes through this area here. Now, under existing conditions, Vermont 67A is considered a minor arterial. It has 11-foot travel lanes, 3-foot shoulders, and is posted at 40 miles per hour. Madison Road is a major collector, which means it feeds the arterial, right? It feeds cars into the arterial roadway. It's 11-foot travel lanes with 30, and it's posted at 30 miles per hour. It doesn't have any shoulders today. The College Drive is a private driveway. It's 22 feet wide. And Silk Road is a local road with 11-foot travel lanes and is posted at 30 miles per hour. Now, there are two crossings currently here today. There's one over Silk Road here, and there's also a crossing over 67A. The crossing at 67A has what's called an RRFB. It's a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. It's usually activated by a push button, and you can see the image of the one that's out there today at this crossing over 67A. we'll talk about that more as we get further into the presentation. There's also an existing gas station located here that was closed in 1986, and it's located here in this side of the image. You can see it here in the bottom left corner. We're aware of this gas station. We're aware of the potential contaminated soils, and we're working with VTrans and with DEC to make sure that, you know, that soil is handled properly in our design. Here I've got outlined the overall project limits of this job. As you can see, we're doing work down both legs of the 67A, but we're also going to be doing work on Silk Road, Madison Road, and a small portion of College Drive. We'll also be doing work, as I mentioned, in that former gas station area as well. Now, one of the things we did after we fully understood the existing conditions is we looked at the scoping study that was done. There was a lot of involvement from the town as we understand it, and a lot of time has been put into this. And so we wanted to take that scoping study, review it, make sure we understood the design, and also looked at ways that we could refine that design and make improvements to it as we took it into that conceptual level plan set. And so we looked at it, and we wanted to make sure that we addressed some of the concerns we had as we first evaluated this scoping study layout. And I'll just talk about those really quick. As you can see here, one of the first things we noticed is the substandard deflection. One of the purposes of the design is to reduce the overall speeds of vehicles that travel through the roundabout. And we identified the ability here for us to increase deflection, which what deflection does is it forces a driver to turn as they maneuver through the roundabout. So the greater the deflection, the slower that driver would be forced to go through the area. And so we identified some options here for increased deflection, which would help reduce speeds as people, you know, if you had a roundabout and you could drive straight through it, it wouldn't be very effective because you'd be able to go very quickly right through the middle of it. And so we wanted to make sure that we helped with that in our design. Another thing we identified in the scoping study that we'd want to improve in our design is a slip lane configuration. As you can see, we've got two locations highlighted here with the red stars. Slip lanes, what they allow you to do as a driver is bypass the roundabout. And so as a driver is headed up Silk Road onto 67A, they would be able to bypass the vehicles in the roundabout and get onto 67A. Now, the issue with that kind of layout is that there's also drivers in the roundabout itself that will also be looking to exit the roundabout, potentially at the same time. And so what this configuration does is that it creates an additional point of conflict between two vehicles. And so when we looked at this concept, we wanted to see if we could improve that to reduce those additional conflict points. And so we've looked at eliminating those slip lanes in our design. We also wanted to make sure that we eliminated any impacts to the Carver property to help with the right-of-way process in this area and issues with that, potential issues that could arise with that. Also, we wanted to eliminate any impacts to the historic gate that's currently located for the college on College Drive. And so we looked at doing that as well with our conceptual design. Now, what you can see here on your screen is our conceptual layout. I think most of you have probably seen this already, but if not, this is what we submitted to VTrans as our conceptual layout. You can see that it does look a little different than what the scoping study had chose as its preferred alternative, but essentially it's the same idea, but it's refined. It's got a little more detail, a little more development and engineering that's been put into it. Now, what we've done is we've eliminated the slip lanes. So as you can see now, there is no slip lane that allows you to totally bypass the roundabout traffic. So we've eliminated the conflict point here, the additional conflict point here and here. We've also improved deflection. As you can see on all approaches to the roundabout, the deflection is exaggerated. It's much more, which will help with the speeds of vehicles traveling through this area. We've also added larger and better defined splitter islands. Splitter islands are important for a roundabout design because they allow vehicles that are approaching the roundabout to see that, hey, something is coming up, something is about to change, the road is changing, you know, you've got a different thing happening in front of you. And so it also has the effect of narrowing the pavement by having that splitter island in the middle of the road. And so it further helps reduce speeds of vehicles that are approaching the roundabout and departing one. Finally, we looked at turning movements. We looked at all the turning movements for all the approaches to this roundabout to make sure that all vehicles that are needed to be accommodated in this design are accommodated. We especially looked at College Drive because we knew that there are some existing issues with turning movements in and out of College Drive that we wanted to improve and also accommodate in our design for larger turning vehicles. We've eliminated the permanent impacts to the Carver property. And we were also able to reduce the impacts to the historic property here in the southeast quadrant of the roundabout and eliminate the impacts to the historic gate on College Drive. Another part of our design was to accommodate future bicycle improvements. We wanted to make sure that this design would last for a long time and that, for future improvements to the roads coming up to the roundabout from the west or the east would be able to be accommodated with our design as well. And so we accommodated that by providing some bike lanes and connections to the shared use path from those future bike lanes that would be, that may be added. Now that I've kind of talked about some of the improvements over the scoping study, I'll just briefly talk about some of the general design features of what you're seeing on your screen. So for Vermont 67A, we're proposing 11-foot lanes with 5-foot bike lanes or bike shoulders. For Madison Road, we're proposing 10-foot lanes with 3-foot shoulders. For College Drive, we're going to maintain the 2 11-foot lanes. And for Silk Road, 10-foot lanes with 3-foot shoulders. Now, all of these configurations account for the Vermont state standards for these types of roads with the volumes that they have and the classifications that they have as well. Another thing that we have looked into providing with our design is as I mentioned this earlier, the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, the RRFBs. Those help with pedestrian crossing and improve safety. There is one today at the 67A crossing, and we're going to be relocating it to this location here. But we're also going to be adding one more for where the Ninja Path crosses Silk Road. We're going to be adding another one there to help further improve the pedestrian safety at that crossing as well. We have concrete splitter islands on 3 out of the 5 approaches. And we have mountable islands at Madison Road and College Drive. Now, I mentioned earlier the turning movements. Now, one of the things we want to do, we need to provide the islands to help delineate where we want vehicles to go. But we also don't want those islands to negatively impact the truck turning movements for those 2 approaches. And so what we've chosen to do is to make those 2 islands mountable, which will allow a truck, like a larger tractor trailer, to drive right up and onto them, but would reduce the likelihood of a regular standard passenger vehicle from doing so because it would be pretty uncomfortable for them to drive up onto that sloped granite edging. And so that's what we've chosen to do for both of those approaches. We've also chosen to use a stamped concrete truck apron, as you can see here around the center of the roundabout. What this does is it allows for trucks such as WB67's big trucks to navigate through the roundabout and even perform turning movements while still keeping the overall roadway pretty narrow so that the vehicles that are the regular passenger vehicles that are traversing through the roundabout stay within that lane and that navigational path that there is. As you can also see, we've accommodated the shared use path that's out there today, the Ninja Path. We made sure that there was continuity of that path into College Drive, into the college property. They have a sidewalk there as well. And as I mentioned, also provide for bicycle access to that shared use path as well for people who choose to use the shared use path rather than go through the roundabout itself on their bikes. From a drainage perspective, we're providing a stone swale on Madison Road. You can see that in the top right corner of your screen, and also an infiltration trench in the bottom left corner to accommodate some of the drainage that will need to be done on site. Finally, you can see here, we're also providing lighting for nighttime operations of the roundabout for vehicles within the roundabout, but also at all the pedestrian crossings. It's important that those are lit during the night as well. And landscape design. Now, landscape design is another feature as part of a roundabout that's important because it alerts drivers of the center island. You know, as they're approaching a roundabout, they can see that there is a center island coming up and they can't drive straight through it. They do have to navigate around it, and landscaping does help with that significantly. Also, we looked at the landscape design to make sure that even though we're providing trees and vegetation, those things will not negatively impact sight distance that's needed at the approaches, right? So you still want to be able to clearly see where the other vehicles are in the roundabout, despite the provided landscaping. And so that's part of our design as well. Now I'll hand it over to Jason to just talk about some of the turning movement evaluations that we've performed.
Thanks, Dennis. So now that Dennis has gone over all of the proposed changes we're making to the geometry at the intersection and the proposed roundabout configuration and the reasons as to why we are making these changes, I'll get a little bit more into the operational analysis we completed here to make sure that all these proposed changes to the intersection configuration and the geometry along the approaches will accomplish the overall goals of this project while also providing safe and efficient traffic operations through the intersection. So the first analysis that I'll go over here is a turning movement analysis that we completed. As Dennis said, we did complete turning movement analysis for all of the approaches and all of the turning movements here. We're going to focus more on College Drive as part of this presentation, as that's where the existing concerns mainly lied. But if anyone wants to see any other movements, we'd be happy to show you them at the end of this presentation when we open it up to questions. So as I said, there were some existing concerns with large vehicle access to and from College Drive under the existing intersection configuration. And the main concern here is that there's Bennington College located just down College Drive here. And we understand that large vehicles will be making deliveries about twice a day to the college. So we wanted to make sure that we did accommodate these vehicles under the proposed configuration here. The design vehicle that we used is a WB67, which is basically a 15-foot long tractor trailer truck that tows a 53-foot trailer. So this is the largest vehicle that we would expect to be going not only to and from College Drive, but through 67 and to all the approaches at the intersection. So here you can see a left turn from a WB67 that would be traveling eastbound on 67 onto College Drive. So you can see here that the WB67 will go into the roundabout and traverse the roundabout. While it makes that left-hand turn, kind of like a U-turn around the roundabout, it will utilize that mountable truck apron that Dennis referred to just prior to this slide. It will also utilize the mountable islands on the side streets and make that right-hand turn onto College Drive with no encroachment into the oncoming lane into the roundabout. So now here is a right turn from 67A heading westbound onto College Drive. So this one's pretty straightforward. The truck can make that right-hand turn with little to no issues at all. Minimal encroachment onto that mountable island on College Drive there. So now these are the exiting movements from College Drive into the roundabout and onto 67A. So this is a left turn from College Drive heading eastbound. So you can see here that the truck will utilize the entirety of that mountable island. However, there's minimal to no encroachment into that oncoming lane for a vehicle exiting the roundabout here. And as it goes around the roundabout, it will utilize that truck apron as it goes around. And you can see as it makes that slight hand turn to continue eastbound on 67A, there's no encroachment into that raised splitter island we're providing on that east leg there. And then finally, we show a right turn from College Drive heading westbound onto 67A. Here you can see a little bit of encroachment over that mountable island into the lane. But as I said, these deliveries with these large vehicles are pretty infrequent. We only expect 2 throughout the course of an entire day maximum. So, this encroachment is not a big concern, and we're not overly concerned with any safety that would result from this minor encroachment here. And then similarly, it will utilize a truck apron as it makes that hard right-hand turn, but will not encroach into that raised concrete splitter island along that west leg there. So in addition to the turning movement analysis that we completed, we also completed some traffic operations analysis for both the AM and PM peak hours. However, we're going to focus on the PM peak hours part of this presentation. The traffic volumes at the intersection are double in the PM peak hour than what they are in the AM peak hour. So as the volumes are much higher in the PM peak hour, it does represent the worst case scenario that we'd expect as far as traffic operations go. To complete this analysis and to generate a simulation that I will show after this slide here, we did use the VISM traffic simulation and analysis software. And it is important to note that this VISM software was also used as part of the scoping study to report the analysis results for the previous preferred alternative of the elliptical roundabout. So using VISM for our current proposed configuration of the peanut roundabout will allow us to make an apples to apples comparison between the expected operations under this refined configuration versus what was proposed under the preferred alternative in the scoping study. So for this analysis, we did use 2019 traffic volumes. So the traffic volumes used as a baseline were collected prior to COVID-19 and the effects that the pandemic has had on traffic volumes. So these 2019 volumes were used as a baseline and were projected to a design year of 2043, using some historical data trends in the area that would account for any expected growths in traffic volumes along any of the project roadways here. On the left-hand side here on this slide, you can see a table. One of the main metrics that we use to kind of evaluate and classify operations along roadways and approaches to intersections is a term called level of service, or LOS, as it's shown in the table here. So you can see there's 6 main categories ranging from LOS-A, or level of service A, to LOS-F. LOS-A would represent the best and most efficient traffic operations, and LOS-F would indicate that the worst possible operations along an approach, and would basically indicate that an approach is operating above its capacity and the traffic volumes that it's experiencing exceed the level of traffic volumes that it can handle and that it was designed for. So on the graphic here, we have some tables showing what the expected traffic operations are along each approach to the intersection and also the overall roundabout. So as shown under the worst case scenario, the PM peak hour, projecting the volumes to the future, we can see that traffic operations are expected to be very efficient with the approaches and all the turning movements operating at a level of service A. The maximum delay that is experienced, I believe, is on the Madison Road southbound left turn, and the maximum delay is 7.5 seconds. So, we expect operations to be efficient under this proposed configuration. Delays and backups are expected to be relatively low, and the overall roundabout will operate, or is expected to operate, at a level of service A as well, with an average control delay of around 5 seconds. So now that we've gone over the operations results and what our analysis showed, this is a simulation that we put together using the VISM software that shows the operations during a clip of the PM peak hour simulation. So Dennis, I'll have you play it. So right off the bat here, I just want to highlight one thing. So here it's kind of tough to see, but a pedestrian is crossing that west leg of the intersection from the shared use path on the north side, crossing over to the south side. So you can see that this vehicle that's exiting the roundabout is yielding to that pedestrian. But what's important to note is that there's enough space between that crosswalk and the circulating lane through the roundabout that vehicle has enough space to yield to a pedestrian or a bike that's crossing without spilling back into and blocking that circulating lane within the roundabout. So that is an important thing to consider when placing the crossings at roundabouts here. So you can see there, and then as the pedestrian crosses over the approaching leg, you'll see that the vehicle will first yield to any pedestrian or bike that's crossing across that shared use path crossing. Then once it yields to any pedestrian or bicycle traffic, it will then proceed when it's safe across that crossing, and then we'll get to the yield point where it will yield to traffic within the roundabout. So it separates those two yield points so that a driver can focus on a pedestrian or a bike, and then separately at a different point closer to the roundabout, focus on the vehicular traffic and yielding to that. So it does increase some safety at the crossings here. So you can see on the east leg right now, there's a rolling queue that's happening. So roundabouts, while there is a little bit of a queue here, it is constantly moving at a slow speed rather than a traffic signal or a stop controlled approach where the queue is standstill. So you can see that the vehicles will roll through and that queue will clear relatively quickly and traverse through the roundabout. And as you can see through on the simulation here, backups are minimal. There's no long queues here. All the approaches are operating pretty efficiently. Vehicle speeds are slowing down, traveling through. Now we can see a large truck that's making a left-hand turn from Madison Road around the roundabout and will continue eastbound onto 67A with no issues there. And you will see the greatest reduction in speeds along 67A. Right now, those vehicles can kind of fly through there as they can go through the intersection freely. Now vehicles will be forced to slow down and yield prior to entering the roundabout. So the greatest reduction in speeds will be seen on 67A through here. So right now we are only at conceptual level, but currently we're estimating the total project improvements to be around $2.6 million. And as I said, this is early on in the process, but it is a pretty, for this level, it's a pretty detailed estimate. So 2.6 million is what we're anticipating right now. And I'll turn it over to Dennis to go over the schedule from here.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, one thing to note is that $2.6 million is federally funded, and that's what we're anticipating, is for it to be federally funded for this design and this construction. The anticipated schedule for this project, as you can see here, we've already submitted the conceptual plans to VTrans on November 6th, and that's what we've kind of gone over with you today, the conceptual plans. The next step is going to be to develop the preliminary plan design, which we currently have scheduled from May to July of 2021. After that will be the right-of-way process. We've got that scheduled from September 21 to March of 2022. One thing to note is that this schedule for the right-of-way does assume that all of the land needed for this project will be donated to the state. And if that doesn't happen, then that right-of-way process will need to extend and be longer as a process, as a schedule. Beyond that, we also have the final plans in August of 2022, contract plans in January of 23, and finally advertisement in March of 2023. After advertisement, the schedule at this point is that construction will be from April of 2023 through April of 2024. So full 1 year construction season at that point. Including landscaping and some of that type of work that may need to extend into the spring of that April of 2024. Now, at this time, thank you all for your attention. And if you have any questions, concerns, comments, if you'd like to go back to any previous slide, feel free to let us know. I can go back and forth to any slide that you saw earlier in the presentation and kind of zoom in and out as needed to help you see anything you want to see. I've also on the screen here, I've got the contact information for Mike and myself with our email addresses. I'll leave this on the screen as for you, and we can also provide that information to you after the meeting if you need it. But there's some of our contact information as well.
So thank you very much, gentlemen. Really great presentation. Particularly enjoyed the little, I'm not sure if you call that a movie or whatever it was. That was particularly interesting. I have a couple comments. There are some other hands up, but before we go there, we have another guest, Andy Schlatter from Bennington College, and I wonder, Andy, if you would like to weigh in just for a second before we go into board questions.
Thanks, Donald. Hi, nice to be able to join you all. And I've been involved in discussing this from the early days of the initial scoping study. And Bennington College has been in favor of the preferred alternative for the initial scoping study and are happy to see the development of this as well. I think there's some fine details to work out when we get into it. But in general, to us, it looks like a dramatic improvement over the current condition, and we're happy to support it. I did have one question regarding land that's impacted or would need to be included in the project. Are there any other landowners that would need to donate right away land other than the college?
So our current design, we've worked pretty hard to make sure that we've eliminated any of the impacts to that Carver property, which is the only abutting property that's not the college. So at this time, we don't anticipate any permanent impacts to their property. It might be some temporary rights just to tie their driveway back into the roadway, but nothing permanent, no.
Okay.
So that's great, and it's going to be interesting to see what this can do for the college. The college has done so much for us. It would be great to make a safer entrance both by foot and by bike and by car and by truck. So hopefully we can do that. Let's see, I've got a couple hands up. Jean, why don't we go to you first, and then we'll go to Stuart. We're going to do board comments first, but we'll include staff in that. So Jean, why don't you go ahead, and then we'll bring Stuart in.
Okay, and I have a few, so I'm going to ask them all at once, and then you can answer them all at once. I'm sure you realize that the Silk Road covered bridge is not far down Silk Road, and I was just wondering if you're addressing signage or anything, because we get a lot of tourists that, you know, go up and down Silk Road. So that was just something that I thought of. Hang on, sorry. The roundabout, the apron, the stamped concrete apron, I was just curious, will it look similar to the one that's further down, you know, near Walmart? Will it look similar, just so I have a visual in my head? You know, in other words, is the concrete going to be the same color, or has there been an attempt to make them look consistent? And I'm assuming there'll be signage, you know, as you're approaching the roundabout from all those entry points, that there's a roundabout coming to alert the drivers. And with the trucks rolling over the stamped concrete, you know, not all that often, as you said, there were only 2 trucks a day that were going to be heading up to Bennington College, but is wear and tear on stamped concrete an issue that we need to be aware of? And that's it. That's all I had.
Okay, great. That's great questions. So I'll just go right back in order for you. We are aware of the covered bridge. We did identify that early on in our design. We will be accommodating the same width of roadway that, you know, is currently accommodated for the covered bridge, and we will be maintaining the signage that's out there for, you know, the covered bridge ahead signs that are currently out there. We'll make sure we account for those. We are not anticipating WB67s going onto that covered bridge, and so we are not accommodating them in the roundabout and exit as well, to kind of discourage that as part of the process. So we are aware of it, and we are accounting for it in our design. The color of the concrete. Now, that is kind of a fine detail that we haven't quite gotten to yet, as far as the exact color of the pavement and things like that. That is definitely something that we can talk more to the town about as we further the design and get into the later stages of it. That's something that will ultimately be, you know, as part of the specs and part of, you know, what goes out to bid to the contractors. So we will account for that as well. We are doing stamped concrete, and we were thinking of using a brick pattern, but if the town has, you know, a pattern that they want to see replicated, we can certainly look into it and make sure we can accommodate that in our proposed design as well. Yes. Signage, yes, we will definitely be providing roundabout signage on all of the approaches so that you will know that there is a roundabout coming up. We'll have a signage package. There will be a whole bunch of signs that will go up for all the different approaches, notifying the traveling public of the roundabout and what is coming up for them. And finally, the trucks. Yes, so we do account for trucks on the mountable islands. So we use concrete because of its durability. The concrete will also be steel reinforced. So there'll actually be steel rebar built into the concrete to provide a lot of that additional strength that's needed in the concrete to allow for large trucks to drive over it without it cracking and becoming damaged. And this is standard practice, you know, these types of aprons and these types of mountable aprons. In Vermont, we've done it on multiple projects and, you know, in other states as well. So what we're proposing should be durable and last a long time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great, Stuart, go ahead.
I do a couple of comments. I think that the brick stamp pattern would be really nice to separate kind of the concrete of the roundabout and the asphalt of the highways and really make that stand out. And the last roundabout built at Walmart, the agency allowed the town to have some input on the landscaping. So I would also ask that you keep that in mind as we move. That's also a very detailed thing that comes much later in the project, but we would love to have some input there. And then my comment or my question is, this seems like a very complex construction project. Are we likely to see lengthy delays during construction?
So thank you, Stuart, for your questions and your comments. Definitely, we will be coordinating with the town regarding the landscaping along and also the college. As you know, you have a driveway right on the roundabout. So, we'll definitely be making sure landscape is part of our, you know, continued coordination for this project. As far as the impacts to the traveling public during construction, one of the very important parts of this design that we will be doing as we get further into the design refinements is the phasing plans. So essentially what we will be doing as an engineering firm is we'll be reviewing the overall design, and we will be coming up with a phasing plan that does allow for the traveling public to navigate through here during construction. Now, roundabout phasing is very complicated. It usually is because of the type of configuration you're trying to build while still maintaining travel through this area. We understand this is an important corridor, and so we will be designing that phasing with multiple phases, so multiple steps essentially. So, you know, similar to, you know, how you would, you know, maybe you've seen like roadway or intersection projects that, you know, you do one side of the road first, you divert all the traffic to the other side, then you stop that work, you switch to the other side, you do that, and you kind of switch back and forth and you move traffic back and forth. And so we will be looking into that. We haven't done that design yet. We haven't done that analysis yet, but that will be part of our design. That's something that we are tasked with performing later on.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Bruce, I see your hand up, and then we'll go to Jeannie.
Sure. I'm just interested in runoff mitigation and strategies for runoff mitigation, particularly because of the river that is nearby. That was one of the reasons we had selected the other. I know you mentioned a couple of strategies, one for Madison Road and one for Silk Road. Could you say a little bit more about what those strategies are to mitigate issues of water runoff?
Yes, definitely. As part of the design, we obviously have a full drainage layout that will be performed. We have already performed a conceptual layout for our drainage. The overall topography of the site, and I'll just go back to the plan view so I can point to a couple things here. So what you see here is as a general, as big picture, the site drains from the northeast to the southwest. All the water kind of goes like this through this area. It drains all towards this southwest corner, and we are aware of that. We are designing with that in mind. There's some existing closed drainage in this area. There's some catch basins on College Drive, a couple more catch basins on 67A, and so as part of our conceptual design, we've already accounted for capturing those basins, and there's actually an existing outfall right about in this area here where I'm pointing to the screen. And that outfall is essentially a pipe that, daylights out above ground, and then water runs from that pipe down towards the wetlands that is further down here. Now, we're not impacting any of the wetlands with our design, but we are going to be rebuilding that outfall. And as part of that process, we'll also be looking at, we'll have to do permitting for this project with the V-Trans and A&R, and we'll have to account for all of the additional impervious that we're going to have out on site. And we've worked very hard to reduce the amount of additional impervious that we're providing on this project. That's one of the things that we've actually looked at the scoping study to try and reduce. We weren't able to reduce it a whole lot because obviously a roundabout is more pavement than just a simple 5-way intersection, but we are going to be treating that additional impervious. And we're looking at different ways to treat that at this time. What you see here is we're proposing an infiltration trench, which is essentially like a trench along the road that would act similar to like a French drain. We've identified that the soils in this area are actually really great soils for infiltration. They're type A soils, which means that they drain very well. And so we're going to be looking to put as much of that water back into the ground that we can with our design. But ultimately, there will be some water from the closed drainage system that does end up being discharged as it does today. And we'll have to account for that as well with our permits and all of that type of work.
Thank you. Thanks. That's helpful.
Okay. Great.
Jeannie, go ahead.
Great, thank you. And thank you for a great presentation. This has been really helpful. I'm a big fan of lighting, but this seems like at present, it's a fairly dark area. And I just wondered what are the kinds of considerations that you take into account when you decide how much lighting, what kind of lighting, that sort of thing?
Definitely. So V-Trans has lighting standards for roundabout designs that they incorporate statewide for all of their projects. We do take an approach that tries to provide the required amount of lighting, but nothing beyond that. We don't want to provide excessive lighting and overlight an area, but we also want to provide enough lighting for safe vehicle and pedestrian operations. And so the pedestrian crossings end up being a very important location for lights, as I noted earlier in the presentation. So you can see there's lights on both approaches to each of the pedestrian crossings. And the points of conflict within a roundabout also would need to be lit. So places where you've got, essentially vehicles entering the actual circulation of the roundabout, we want to light those locations as well, and to provide that visibility within the actual roundabout itself. Light for one of the things that V-Trans has in their standards for lighting is cutoff lighting. And so it's essentially, I don't know how familiar everyone is with this concept, but it's essentially you provide lighting that shines straight down onto the pavement and lights the pavement and whatever's on it, but doesn't shoot that light out to the side and up into the air. You've all seen malls and places where you look over at the night and you see the entire sky is lit up above it. With a lot of the new designs for the park and rides and intersections, V-Trans does account for that by providing that cutoff lighting so that it only shines down and provides that minimal amount without being excessive.
Great, thank you very much.
Good questions, board. I have a couple of very, very minor concerns, and they fall into the absolutely niggly kind of category. But the pedestrian crossing on 67 on the west side of the island is on a hard curb, an island, what you call it, is a splitter island. And so that's truly a pedestrian refuge there. But the one where you're crossing College Road is mountable, and really there's not much keeping cars off of that. And it feels to me like you're making quite a long distance for people to have to cross with not a lot of safety. And I wonder if it would make sense to push that up a little closer. I recognize you have a gate there, but I wonder if it would make it less of a crossing for somebody crossing slowly if that pedestrian crossing was just a little further north. And then my second question is the bike lane coming from the east along 67 peters out pretty abruptly at that driveway. And I wonder if, I couldn't tell from your close-up, but I wonder if there's still a little bit of a bike lane there when bikes get to that point, or if they truly have to merge with cars just before they get to that entry point.
Yeah, great questions, great questions. So first, the mountable island. That is something that we've looked at very carefully. It's a difficult decision from a design perspective. It's something that we've kind of worked through and make sure that, you know, we have the best design from trucks, vehicles, and pedestrians. We kind of have to look at all three and make sure that it's you know, there is maneuverability and for all of them. Now, one of the things that does benefit us is that College Drive has two narrow lanes. There's no shoulders, so that does help reduce the overall width. But you're correct in noting that the island is mountable. Now, with the mountable island, it does act as a refuge for standard vehicles, you know, such as just regular passenger vehicles. They will not be driving up onto it. You know, obviously with enough speed and force, any vehicle can drive onto any surface, but because of the configuration of the island, it does discourage regular passenger vehicles from driving onto it and from using it as something to drive over. It does, with the truck movements, since those are only happening twice a day during the peak, which is my understanding is in the wintertime when the deliveries are made for the heating plant. We feel that is an infrequent enough occurrence on a daily basis that the rest of the day, it's just passenger vehicles going in and out of that driveway. And so there will not be, you know, vehicles mounting up onto that island during that time. But to, you know, make that island fully mountable would eliminate the truckability from getting in and out of that driveway. And so that would be something we would not be able to necessarily do both, account for the 67s and make it a vertical curb. We can look into potentially relocating that crossing further away from the roundabout. There's a couple considerations that we have to account for in that case is just the idea of how much storage we provide after the crossing for the vehicles and making sure that that's enough. But moving further away, you know, may be another option that we can consider. That's something that we can definitely look into as we further refine the design.
And Dennis, if you don't mind, Mr. Campbell, on the mountable islands, it does have a curb that is higher than the pavement surface itself. So it's not flush. It's not flush with the pavement surface. It's slightly elevated above the pavement surface to a point where, as Dennis noted, a car could go up and over it, but it would be very uncomfortable to do that. But a truck is very easily able to overcome and drive over that. It's a sloped granite curb edging that has about a 3 or 4 inch curb reveal or so that is mountable, but it's not flush with the surrounding pavement. So if that helps. But I think
Very
we can
helpful.
also,
not what I was imagining. That's great.
Yeah. And that's how the truck apron will be surrounding the roundabout as well, the same sort of detail. But in any event, your question is a good one, and we'll still look at potentially moving that crossing to the north a little bit.
And Dennis, are we at all worried about bikes running out of room to maneuver as they come east?
Oh yeah. So that's your second question. Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that we do in a roundabout is we actually eliminate a bike lane within the roundabout itself, because we want bicycles that feel comfortable driving in the road and driving in the shoulder to actually merge in with the traffic. Vehicle traffic at that point should be significantly reduced as far as speeds go. They're approaching a yield condition, so they're going to be slowing down, and that's actually the best place for bikes to merge into that traffic. And we don't want bikes to be in conflict with vehicles in the roundabout. We want them to be with the flow of vehicles, right? So as a bicycle approaches from the east, we actually want them to merge into the travel lane and navigate through the roundabout as a vehicle.
I see.
For then merging back into that shoulder. Because what happens is if they're not, then you might have a car and a bike driving next to each other in a roundabout, which would be a potential issue and a conflict there. So we do want bikes to be either in front or behind a car, not next to a car when it comes to a roundabout design. Now, people who are uncomfortable with that, they will have the opportunity just further up the road to get onto that ninja path.
Yeah.
And take the ninja path and take all the crossings. So if you've got someone with their kids on bikes and they don't want to drive through a roundabout, they can get off onto that shared use path, take that shared use path to the other side, and then get back to the shoulder.
Yeah.
But people who are commuting on bikes, they typically will just merge right into with the vehicles and navigate with cars through the roundabout.
Yeah, that's great. Those are good answers. I've got one more board question. I'm going to go to Jean in just a minute, but let me just give my final thoughts. Then there's a citizen that's that inadvertently entered into the meeting, and he's waiting patiently to ask his question. So Sam, I'll get to you in just a minute. But I'd like to just say, first of all, thank you. This is a great proposal, very well presented. It was a little confusing in the handout because north was facing down. And so I think it took a number of us a while to figure out which road was which, but this is really great. I feel like you've been very responsive to the board's comments, and that is very helpful too. And I also just feel the slight need to thank in his absence Mark Anders, who I know has put a tremendous amount of work in this. The regional commission's been a big help in bringing this along, and so I'm sure Mark is here in spirit, even though he's not with us on this meeting. So Jean, one final word from you, and then let's Sam in, and then we may wrap this portion of the meeting up.
Sure, yeah, this will be quick. So when you were talking about the mountable islands and the pedestrian crossing there, I was just curious, would someone in a wheelchair, like a motorized wheelchair, would they be able to navigate over one of the mountable islands that has the pedestrian crossing on it?
Yeah, great question. That's something that we definitely evaluate as we're doing the design. We'll actually do a detailed grading plan when we further, take the design further down the road, and we'll actually make sure that everything is ADA compliant. Yeah, that's a big part of our design as we do this, is to make sure that all the ramps are ADA compliant. They meet all the federal standards for handicap accessibility. They'll have detectable warning panels, as you leave the road into the crossing. And when it comes to mountable islands, what you'll see here is you'll see that the mountable island itself is like a reddish color in the image, but the crossing itself is that like beige color, and that will actually be flush with the pavement. So there'll be this like flush pedestrian crossing essentially that we're proposing. That is easier to understand when you have the raised islands, but the concept is the same. So that we will not have a lip that wheelchairs have to drive up and over. That doesn't comply with ADA. So we'll have to, whatever we design, whatever we propose, will have to be ADA compliant and not have that lip on it.
Great, thank you. We're all learning so much.
Yeah, good question, Jean. Sam Rustino, you are on with us. If you would push *6 and enter the meeting, we'd be glad to have you with us and hear your comments. Caller ending in 840, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Let's see if that works. Caller ending in 840. I think that's Sam Restino. If you're with us, Sam, and you have a comment you'd like to make, please press *6 and you'll be in the meeting. And if not, we'll move on to other things. I don't see anybody else in the waiting room at this point, any other public comment. So not hearing from this caller, I think we probably are free to move on at this point. So unless there are any final comments, I guess, Dan or Stuart, if you have any final comments on this, I think we need to thank this group for a very thorough presentation. And it may be several years away at this point. April 2023 feels like a long time from now, but it would be great to, it'll be great to have this done when you get to it. Stuart, Dan, anything from you before we wrap this up?
Go ahead, Dan.
Just a thank you to Bennington College for being such a great partner and agreeing to donate the land. And we look forward to working with Andy as the final details are put forth. So thanks to our partner, Bennington College.
Yeah, and I just thanks to the folks who made the presentation. It was very helpful and enjoyable as well.
I like peanut. I like peanut better than, I was thinking of it as an amoeba, but I think a peanut is maybe a better description of it. Though it does look sort of like a cell structure diagram or something like that. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll let you find your way out of the meeting, and we look forward to having you come back.
Thank you all very much for your time.
All right. Great.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Yes,
Good night.
thank you.
Happy holidays.
Good night.
Yes. you
Yes,
too.
same to you.
That's a lot of fun, huh, board? It's great to see something like that coming around, and that's been kind of in the dream category for a long time, and it's really nice to see that starting to kind of come to pass. I mean it, Dan. When you see Mark Andrews, give him a slap and tell him we appreciate all the years he's been hammering away at this one. Jim Sullivan too, really.
Yeah, that's the BCRC has pushed for over 20 years on this. So finally making some progress. So
Yeah.
it's great.
So we'll move on to the next item on our agenda here. We're just a little bit behind, but we're doing all right. And that is the community policing update. And so when we normally do a community policing update, I turn this over to Jeannie, but I think in this particular case, I'd like to, with your permission, Jeannie and Bruce and Jean, I'd like to ask the board if we could do this as two parts. So the first part of this A would be the policies that we have seen already. Additions have been made. You've had a chance to see the additions or subtractions. Use of force, you know, the highlights are a duty to de-escalate. It adds prohibited restraints. The duty of care includes mental health, which I think is really important, and it really defines both active resistance and special populations. So that all feels like really important work, something that we should move forward, and duty to intervene. The significant change for me there was really shall intervene is the part which makes it very clear that the intention is that intervention will happen when inappropriate activity is taking place, and really a good definition of what objectively reasonable means. And then the use of conducted electrical weapons, CEWs, is really just clerical fixes. So I'd like to do this in two parts. I guess I would open up this part for any further comments on the second reading of policies 1 through 3 at this point. No? Jean, I see you sort of waving your hand. Go ahead, Jean. Connor.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that on, let's see, response to resistance, use of force, section K, I had an issue with the word prolonged. I'm assuming there was no other word that could be used.
Oops. Jean, you're absolutely right. There isn't another word. Just so that folks understand, prolonged implies in the word, and that's, I went back and looked at what we were trying to do. means that it means unreasonably. That if you're trying to hold someone in some position in a prolonged way, that means you're doing it unreasonably already. And that's precisely what this policy is intending not to have happen. So it's, you know, there's just not another word that would do what we need it to do.
Can you live with that, Jean?
I think I have to.
Well, I guess we're asking you, can you live with it? You know, so
I
let's.
can live with
these
it.
are-
To me, it's just another one of those words that's somewhat subjective. I like things, you know, as defined as possible, but I'm not a lawyer. If there was a better word, we could use it. So I'm just going to trust Bruce that he's thought about it, he's checked, and
Well,
I
and
can live
not
with
just
it.
Bruce. Certainly the committee has been, a committee of people.
It's a word that concerned us all as well, you know, but there isn't a better word to use. And interestingly enough, it is a much more objective word than you would think, the way it's treated in the law.
Jeannie, just a quick note to you. I had asked you and you did send to me the names of everybody on the committees. I don't have that email right in front of me. So at the end of this, I'd love to thank them again, please. And so Jeannie, if you'd be ready to do that in a
I
few
am.
minutes, that'd be
Okay,
great.
yes,
Thank you.
I can do
Can you
that.
do that,
Now-
Jeannie? I have it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not right now,
I
but
do have
I just want to make sure that we
Yep.
realize that.
Yep.
I guess what I'm getting at, Jean, is when I say, can you live with this? You know, there's a lot of subjectivity in a lot of these policies. These are policies. In other words, we can change them. If we start driving them and find out there are deficiencies, we can change them. It's not like it takes a town meeting vote or something like that. This is the policy, which is something that is kind of like the way we're doing things, but we can change that if we find out that we've made a mistake. So my feeling on these first three policies is they add some very important elements to our making clear our sort of expectations of our people, and that it probably benefits everybody to get them down as soon as possible and to have them become our stated policy. So that my thinking is that if people feel so moved, I would love to even consider moving forward with these three policies, but I would look to the board for how they'd like to handle that.
I'm ready to move the adoption of, we should do these each separately, however, I think. So I would be happy to move the adoption of the response to resistance use of force policy.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Jean E. Any board discussion on the use of force policy?
I'm going to just say, I think it's really well, I think this is a really good policy. And I think it aligns with other policies we've seen, and in some cases is clearer and I think a little stronger. So I'm strongly in favor of it.
Okay. Any other board comments? Not seeing any, I would ask you to unmute yourselves, and all in favor of the use of force policy as circulated, please say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? No? Okay, thank you. I would look for a motion on the duty to intervene.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any board discussion on the duty to intervene? Again, highlights being that there shall be intervention when appropriate, and really defining what we mean by objectively reasonable. Any further board discussion on that?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So the one we just adopted, so it had some CALEA standards on it. I just wondered if it doesn't look like you're able to find any CALEA standards for the duty to intervene. I wondered
That
if-
is, Sarah, I'm going to take that as a clerical issue as much as anything. I've been in touch with the League of Cities and Towns. They're the ones that have connected regarding those standards. And they didn't have any on theirs yet, and they haven't responded to my inquiry about others. So as far as those standards, I suspect, unless somebody tells me otherwise, they can be, they're not really part of the policy, but they, we can create them as a reference.
I don't think they are part of the policy. I think they could be added later.
Okay.
Right.
So they could be added at some point when we.
And they can be added as soon as the folks tell us which ones are the right standards. Yeah,
Okay. Sounds
And it's a good
Thanks.
point, Sarah. We should add those. That's good.
Thanks.
absolutely. But that
Other
was a good
comments?
assumption.
Never
Let me,
mind, do that.
that's okay. Mr. Chair, if I could just say one thing about this.
Please do.
A number of departments have this, and it is referenced in the use of force policy. A lot of departments have them as one. And we chose to go the way that the League of Cities and Towns has also chosen, partly to emphasize the one thing, and this is where we got feedback over the last couple of weeks. Concern that officers will not intervene. I think this policy makes it crystal clear that there is protection for any officer who does intervene, and that officers have an absolute obligation to intervene as soon as it's safe to do so. And that, it seems to me, is crystal clear in any way you can think. And if they choose not to intervene when they should have, they themselves are violating the policy and can be disciplined. So I think this is a very strong policy, and I hope we adopt it.
Yeah, that duty to intervene is something that, especially this summer, has come up so strongly around the country. So, all right, any other comments from the board? If not, I'd like to ask you to unmute yourself, to call the question here and say, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? No? Okay, thank you. And then the last one is the use of conducted electrical weapons, so tasers, etc. And my understanding from the last meeting is that this is mostly boilerplate from the state, which we have to use. There were only minor clerical fixes, things like punctuation and things like that. So I don't think that there's too much to discuss on this one. Have I got that right, committee?
Yes.
Okay. So failing any board discussion on this, I would look for a motion. Have I asked for a motion on this one already? No.
No.
I'd like a
No.
motion for this one, please.
I
Thank
would
you. And a
move its
second?
adoption.
Second, please. Thank you,
Second.
Sarah. Any board discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, thank you very much. That is good work, and we'll thank the committee members at the end, but that's really a heavy lift and really very important. So full stop there. Deep breath, and now let's pivot and move on to part B, policies, the first reading of the policies, investigation and reporting of hate crimes, and fair and impartial policing. And I know I have some comments on these. I bet other board members do, but why don't I ask the work group if they would be willing to, or maybe it's you, Bruce, if you'd be willing to give us a brief overview of what we're looking at here.
Well, let me just get this up so I can see what I'm talking about. I had it up. There it is. This is investigation and reporting of hate crimes.
That's right.
And what I can say is this was an IACP model policy. And I would say, while there was a good deal of work being done on both the policy level and the purpose statement, where the committee really did tremendous work, I think, was under the area of definitions, and really highlighting changes, both the policies that we were, both model policies that we were utilizing, one from the IACP and one from the League of Cities and Towns. Both of them were old and, or older, let's put it that way. And as a result, I think they were a little behind, but we had really talented folks who were skilled at working out what the definitions of the kinds of groups that hate crimes might be committed against, as well as better definitions in general. You can see that from all of the modifications. So I don't know what else anybody wants. People should ask questions, I guess.
No, that's great. I'm happy to start out if that's all right with people. I don't need you to answer them as I go along, Bruce. I think my preference would be to give you a number of comments / questions and then have you take them back to your group and work on them and see what you come up with. I'm not sure we need to fix them all tonight, but see what you think. My first comment is that on line 20, the line is that the Bennington Police Department shall employ all necessary resources and vigorous law enforcement actions to identify and arrest hate crime perpetrators. And I absolutely agree with that sentiment, but I do wonder about the phrase all necessary resources. And I wonder if that could be construed to include things that we don't have access to. So technologies that we don't have, or capacities that we don't have, fingerprinting or genetic analysis or something like that that might just be beyond our availability. So what's that's one thought, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, because I do feel like we should take all necessary, apply all necessary resources that we can, but I think that there may be some limits to what a town could do in a situation. You could end up with $1 million bill from a, I don't know, genetics lab or something. I don't really know what that is. So that's one concern I had. The second is really my ignorance. I wish I might go back and watch the meeting, because I think it was very interesting how you ended up rearranging identifying the groups that should be labeled in this. And I noticed that you took out the word ethnicity, which is, I haven't kept up with, I think, a lot of the words, and I know it's difficult. A lot of things change, but I thought ethnicity was one that we continue to use, but it has been taken out, which is fine if that's the best way to go on it. But if we're going to do that, I wonder if we still need line 69, which is ethnic group, a definition of ethnic group, which doesn't show up anywhere else in the policy, because you have taken it out. So again, there may be some other value in having ethnic group defined that might reference some other policy that we have, maybe not this policy, but if not, maybe it doesn't belong here. I'm not sure. I guess I would leave that to you. Yeah. And then just the third thing in the sexual orientation in H, so line 79 and 80. The first sentence is perfect, I think. Sexual orientation, a person's physical, romantic, and/or emotional attraction to members of the same and/or opposite sex. I wonder if we really need to offer examples after that. That line that says examples include but are not limited to homosexual, bisexual, heterosexual. I mean, there are many more words that we could put in there, and I just question whether that second sentence really does very much. If you could just leave it at the first sentence, which would be just say what you mean, and it feels pretty self-evident to me. So those are, I guess, my questions, and I don't know if I'm looking for answers so much right now. Would it be helpful to respond to any of that, Bruce, or would you like to move on to other thoughts from board members?
Let me just say this. The intent of the group was to utilize the list as it is currently in the statute of list of classifications.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I haven't memorized that particular statute yet. Probably won't ever, but I will go back and double check and see if ethnicity is in that group. I don't think it is, but I believe it's not. And but I do believe that there was a reason why we defined ethnic group, and I'll just come up. I'll look back in my notes and try to find out what it is.
Okay. The only other sort of, we'll get to this in the next comment, but the only other thing that was hard for me to reconcile is that in the next policy, and again, I'm jumping ahead to fair and impartial policing.
Right.
Section B, the personal characteristics, is quite a different list.
Right.
And it doesn't jibe particularly well with the list that's generated in the first policy.
Different issue.
Okay.
That's because it's a different issue.
That's intentional. Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's it from me. Board members? Go ahead, Jean.
Yeah, on line 69, the one that's number or letter I, sex, there are people, and I don't know what the politically correct terminology is. There are people that have physical attributes that are both male and female.
Hermaphroditic.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what you're supposed to call them, but yeah, I didn't know if that should be included as well.
In which line, Jean? Line 69, you're saying? Which line? You're muted.
69, sorry. Line 69, section I.
You're looking at the clean copy.
Yeah, looking at the clean copy, sorry.
Yeah. Would you be willing to jump to the red line, please, Jean, and tell us what line you're on?
82. So basically it says there are people that are male or female, but there are people that are both. Physiologically both.
I suspect this is something your committee spent a lot of time on, right?
You betcha.
Can I, Bruce?
Sure.
From so two things. So I was an observer at that one. So there was quite a bit of discussion about that, and also about the examples in H. And my memory was that let's see, Jean's question of what line was it again? Dang it, I just lost it.
82.
82. That ended up being a Webster's dictionary definition, and that the use of the term two main categories was where the group finally decided that as long as it said two main categories, it did not exclude other sexes. So that's where that came from. I mean, whether it should be relooked at, that's a different question, but that was the thinking there. And then under sexual orientation, I believe that one of the committee members or more felt that it was important to have a few examples. And so it wasn't to be an inclusive list, but just to provide some examples. But again, I'm not saying that, I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I'm just saying that was the discussion. So you might want to watch it was a great discussion.
Well, and that's why I throw it out more as things just reactions, but I have not thought as deeply about this as that you and your committee have. So
Would the phrase non-binary be helpful? Bruce?
I'm thinking. Sorry, Jim. I'll take that under advisement and check back with the committee.
Yeah.
I think the committee had a great deal of expertise in this area, and I'd like to tap them. So let me go back and we'll see. And I'm sure we may get comments as well from our colleagues in the community. So, okay, thanks, Jim.
Other Other comments from the board? Go ahead, Jeannie.
Whoops. So I had a question on, let's see. I'm looking at the clean copy because it doesn't really show up on the
Okay, yeah,
on the marked up one, and it is letter D. So under the definition of hate group, there's a footnote,
yes.
and I just I don't remember anything about this. So I'm wondering the purpose of the footnote. It specifically names 3 organizations that track hate groups.
Right.
And my guess is that their lists are slightly different. So is this meant to be, for example, these might be good organizations to look at, or is there a preferred list? It seems it seems slightly random to me.
Well, okay. And footnotes in these kinds of things are a little random.
Okay.
But this was a footnote that was in the IACP model. I will say these 3 groups really are the only groups that track hate groups of any reputation whatsoever. They collaborate as well, both particularly in terms of the FBI collaborating with both the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League. And I realize those may be organizations that not everybody knows. I had asked, I think I had asked at the time whether we should keep this one in, but I don't have any feelings other than it's a helpful place in case somebody in town or somebody on the police want to go and say, is this group, does anybody know about this group? Here are 3 places that would pretty well be pretty much able to tell you this is a known hate group.
So I guess my question, I am familiar with these organizations. So I guess my question, I mean, there were 2 other footnotes and those were deleted. So my question is more, do we want to say, for example, because for all we know, in 3 years, there may be you know, a new organization or an organization that takes this up and does it in a more collaborative, it does it in a different way. I'm just, I think it's more the footnote. I think I would feel a little more comfortable if the footnote gave some direction that these are examples of good, good resources, or, use Southern Poverty Law Center as your first and FBI as your second. I mean, whatever our guidance is on this.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can take that under, I think we can talk about it. I will say the reason the other 2 were eliminated was because we changed the definitions. Those were sources of definitions, as I recall. One was the definition of hate groups, and another one, I don't remember what it was right offhand, but they were eliminated because we changed their definitions, and we don't want to cite somebody that we changed.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board comments? I have a citizen in the waiting room and would like to get her in if board members are ready. So Lynn, I'm going to enter you into the meeting, and at this point, you have to press *6 to unmute yourself, if you would, please. And welcome to the select board meeting. Lynn, I think, are you there?
Yeah, hi, yeah, this is Lynn Maz, a Bennington resident. So I need to go kind of back up for a minute. When the policies were voted in just earlier tonight, there were some concerns that I know a few of us sent in, and I'm not sure if they were addressed or not. So I guess my question is, what's the process for changing these policies that were just voted in going forward? And how can the broader community get answers and clarifications about their concerns on these?
Well, Bruce, why don't I let you,
Okay.
oh, Jeannie, go ahead.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, so Lynn, we did receive your comments. They did, we did look through them. Bruce, I know spent a lot of time on them and, you know, we can talk later as well. The majority, actually, I believe all of the comments were fairly broad in terms of the questions. They did not address specific language in any of the policies, but were more larger, I guess, philosophical questions around how does this policy connect to something like an oversight committee, or, you know, they were broader questions. So the purpose of the first and second reading here is really to give people an opportunity to really dig into the policy and say, you know, this word doesn't feel appropriate, or what if we broaden out this definition, or it's those sorts of comments. So
right, yeah, there were, I recognize that what was sent to you guys was kind of a mix of broad questions, but there were some specific things, and I haven't gotten a chance to go through and see if those kind of, there were like a few specific tweaks that I don't know if they got in there. I haven't been able to check it through yet. But my question is, if those, you know, specific tweaks, if you will, haven't been made, what's the process for getting them put in now that these policies have already been voted in?
Well, the process is that over the last 3 weeks, the public as well as select board members, staff had the opportunity to submit, you know, submit comments. And I think as you just observed tonight, I think several of us that had specific things that we wanted to see in, maybe didn't go in exactly the way that we thought, or maybe didn't get added at all. So just because I think a footnote should read a certain way doesn't mean that it's going to. So the process is that anything that felt like it should go back to the full committee, Bruce is taking back to the full committee. These policy groups really are the people who are doing that first, you know, initial drafting that then comes to us. So you followed the process. I would encourage you to go back and look at the very specific comments that you made on the policy and see if you feel like your concerns were addressed there. And in terms, you know, in terms of your more general questions, we do have a couple updates right after we finish the policies, and some of them will be addressed there. And you know, we can make sure that you get answers to all the general questions that you raised.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thanks for your help tonight.
Sure.
Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.
Hey, happy holidays, everybody.
Yes, you too.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, so these policies are, we need to vote them in, and we need to start using them. And yet they can be something of a living document, so that we can continue to move them along as we go. So are there other comments for Bruce to take back to the work group? Okay, would you like to talk a little bit, Bruce, about the fair and impartial policing?
Sure, let me get it up for me. Okay. This is a mandated policy. The town police department has had a fair and impartial policing policy. This is, as I believe, we actually utilized a lot of that policy, but continued to, we did some improvement. Let me get the one up that's actually the red line version. Excuse me, folks, I have to get to the right document. My apologies. Okay. The fair and impartial policing policy was initially drafted by the Vermont Criminal Justice Training Council. It was adopted by or created as a policy for the by the League of Cities and Towns, and I think well, I think it actually speaks for itself. What we're talking about is the need for the PD to conduct all of its policing regardless of the characteristics, personal characteristics. And that's why this is different than the protected classes. Because while I might not be I am not in a protected class, according to the statute, I do have personal characteristics. And therefore, if someone has it in for people who are, for white males over the age of 65, that would be in violation of the fair and impartial policing policy. So that's why, Donald, they're not quite the same thing. We're not really talking, this is a broader concept, and it's one that is statutorily required. It is, I think, followed by the Bennington PD in its current status. This will be some changes. And if you have questions about that, I will get up my redlined copy and see if I can't help answer some questions or at least take notes.
I didn't have as many questions, although I was interested in that B personal characteristics list, which got me thinking
Did I help answer that question?
Yes, you did, and it got me thinking. You answered it very well. So that's the only comment I had really, was parsing out marital status and mental illness and age and homelessness and a number of other things, that some of which felt like would hate speech apply to somebody yelling at an old guy like me or something like that. But no, that's not it. It's the protected classes that you're getting at in the hate
No.
speech. So right.
So
yeah, it feels like less to talk about in this policy. Do I have other thoughts from the board? Go ahead, Jean.
Yeah, when let's see, part B on page 3, personal characteristics, you mentioned mental illness was added, homelessness was added. I just didn't know if people that are suffering from addiction should be added, or would that fall under mental illness?
I don't think addiction is necessary. I mean, I'd have to go back and look at whether I would think, it could be.
You don't have to do this in real time, Bruce.
Yeah, I know. I think that's an interesting question, Jean, and we should look at it.
Good thought, Jean. Any other comments? I would like to kind of wrap this up by they say you can't thank people too many times. I do want to thank very sincerely the citizens that spent so much time and effort working on this. I know it's been a long process. There's been a lot of back and forth. There's been a tremendous amount of work that have gone into these policies. And for those that have been following it, it's really quite a piece of work. So Jeannie, I would love to invite you, if you'd be willing to, just to roll that list out again and tell us who we're thankful to tonight.
Yeah, so for the first group, who were not only the first group, but also had 3 really big policies to look at. The use of force, response to active resistance, duty to intervene, and use of CEWs. There was Peter Niles, Dan Merges, Ricardo Wilson, and Allison Levy. And then on these 2 new policies, those are 2 more committees that really worked on those. For investigation of hate crimes and reporting, Grace Winslow, Jamar Bivens, Cindy Taylor, and Mark Blank were the community members on those. And then for fair and impartial policing, Father Bob Weissman, Kate Canning, Greg Berda, and Alana Hart were the 4 people who participated in that one. They were all spectacular. And Bruce, do you want to add we also had the 3 extraordinary permanent members who were Officer Dan Ferrara, Bruce Lee Clark from the Select Board, and Dan Monks, Assistant Town Manager. And like the amount of time that every single person has put into this has just been extraordinary. The time and the care. So
Yeah.
thank them.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, really great, great help to have you folks doing that. Well, I'd like to move on, if we could, at this point, to our next agenda item, which is
Donald, we weren't
yeah.
finished.
Oh, you're not finished.
We're not finished.
Oh.
We have 2 more quick items.
I'm sorry, I just didn't see that is on here. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So Jean, you were going to talk about themes that came out of the community board comments.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks. So the community discussion boards are now down. I took them down, I guess, right after Thanksgiving. And I wrote up just a brief summary, a little introductory statement, and then a summary of each question and kind of the tenor of what the comments were. So we received a total of 101 comments. I'd like to thank everyone again. We're thanking people left and right tonight, but that's good. I want to thank everyone who took the time to write comments. Bruce, Jeannie, and I were very encouraged by the level of engagement and the thoughtfulness of the majority of the comments. And we feel like it was a very worthwhile exercise. The report that I'm going to read is a very brief synopsis of each question to get the pulse of the community. I looked at the comments for each question and saw some themes that started to emerge. So I just sort of, encapsulated them in these statements. And if anyone's interested, they can read all of the statements are now posted on the website. And I just want to reiterate, these are not comments that anyone has to respond to. They were literally just to get a pulse of the community. So, as you read them, as we read them, as the police department reads them, that's what you do. You read them, internalize them, think about them, and keep them in mind as we're making decisions and planning in the future. So the first question was, what do you expect of a police officer? The themes that I noticed in response to this question addressed issues of trust, respect, compassion, and safety and integrity. Several people made comments about fair treatment for all. Several comments were positive and voiced appreciation for the work the Bennington Police Department does. Question 2 was, what makes you feel safe in your community? Many people were interested in the police being more connected to the community. Again, there were several positive comments about the response they received from the police department. And there was some concern expressed concerning authoritarianism and abuse of power. Question 3, what do you think the BPD could do to improve life and safety? This question brought out several comments concerning mental health issues. The need for a citizen oversight committee was raised a few times, and people were concerned about transparency and accountability. And again, there were several comments where gratitude and compliments were shared. And the question 4 was, how can the community and the Bennington Police Department better engage with each other? Community oversight came up multiple times again in response to this question. People urged the police department to immerse themselves in the community to a greater degree, such as walking their beats and getting involved in community groups. And this comment was particularly moving, I thought. One person asked for forgiveness for mistakes that he or she had made. I almost started to cry when I read that one. So anyway, that's a quick synopsis of the questions, and thank you all for taking the time to write them. They were really fascinating to read, and I really, really enjoyed reading all of them.
Yeah, so you say on the town's website, people can find them in the, yeah. Great.
Yeah, and that's great. And then the very last thing, Donald, I know we're way behind time, is we just wanted to let everyone know that we have opened the scope of work and application for the winter spring advisory groups to meet to look at the next 6 policies of the Bennington Police Department. And you can find the scope of work and application on the town's website. You go to resource tab and then go to community policing, and you will see it under the policy review process. So it's very straightforward to find. The application process is open through until noon on Monday, December 28th. We will start conducting interviews the Monday of the week of January 4th. So you've got a couple weeks to get in an application. It looks very similar to the application that was done this fall. We are opening it up to anyone that would like to, that lives or works in Bennington, that would like to take part. So if you have engaged in this process before, you are very welcome to engage again. And I think we're looking for 24 more volunteers. So, you know, we had like the people that served in the fall were just fabulous. And we're looking forward to working with another 24 wonderful community members. The 3 permanent members will stay the same as in the fall. And so the format will look very similar, except that probably all the meetings and the interviews will be on Zoom is our guess. Okay. So if you have questions, please reach out, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory on the website. Yeah. Okay, we're done.
Great.
Thank you, Donald.
That's great. Yeah, I apologize, Jeannie. I just, I knew you had other things. I just didn't see it on the agenda and I jumped ahead a little bit fast. So thank you for all the work that's going into that. We're going to go to item 5, which is the charter amendment signing of the warning. Stuart, what do you got for us there?
Yes, this is very similar to the proposal that we had in 2018. It is a charter amendment proposal for a mayoral form of government. It does require 2 public hearings, and they need at least 30 days notice before the first hearing. The second hearing must occur when it's a item by petition within 10 days of the first meeting. So I have selected February 1st and February 8th, but they're both Mondays. The February 1st is off schedule meeting. The February 8th would be a regular select board meeting. So the first meeting would be something that the board would discuss this proposal with those who wish to comment. And then the second meeting would conclude the process and we would then move forward. Because this is by petition, it is on the ballot, but we do need to follow the protocols outlined in the statute. And this requires the board authorizing you to sign this notice so that we can get it published prior to January 1. So we have some time, but I did want to move this forward because we will have on the 28th, the budget warning and presentation probably coming your way.
Okay, board. So this is, we're fitting things in tightly here, shoehorning it in, but this does look like it meets the requirements, Stuart. You've double checked that. We're
Yes, I have.
relying on you for that. So I may not be able to make the meeting on the 8th. I'm going to warn the board right now, but that is yet to be determined at this point. Nevertheless, I think we should probably just adopt this. I would look for a motion to go ahead and adopt this public notice of public hearing.
And a motion to authorize the chair to sign.
And a motion to authorize the chair to sign. That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
So move.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor, please say, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. February 1st and February 8th. The next item on the agenda is the agency petition requirement. I think, Stuart, you and I have talked a lot about this. This is not an easy situation, but in some ways it's very easy, and in other ways it's kind of painful. But would you like to lay this out for us, please?
Sure. Been approached by an agency who this year was hoping to be able to receive additional funding from what they have in the past. And as you know, our policy provides that if you wish to receive more funding, you must petition to be placed on the ballot for that amount. This agency has asked if in fact the board would place them on the ballot without the petition requirement due to the COVID problems that they may face when trying to petition. It's a question that has been posed in other municipalities of similar size. I can't say there's an easy answer to it, but in our case, the mayoral proposal came forward via petition. And so we kind of, in a sense, have a precedent. And if in fact we are going to deviate from our policy to favor one agency, I think then we must be faced or may be faced with the questions from other agencies for similar help.
So it has been our policy to require signatures. I think that's a test of, is there voter appetite for an increased amount on the ballot for consideration. Fortunately, almost all the agencies get funded, and they all do good work. We're very, we're happy that they are here to take care of our community. But they also have a big impact on property taxes, and it's what, north of $100,000 of additional agency money that needs to be built into the tax rates. And I think if we were unchecked on that, we would see a significant property tax increase. And I guess it would be my opinion that this would be a particularly bad year for property taxpayers to see that kind of any kind of a jump if we can avoid it. It does feel like there's a fairness thing too, in that we were asked to waive the signature requirement once already and declined. And so then to not require signatures in a different but similar situation feels unfair to me. So that's my opinion. I'd be interested to know where the rest of the board sits on this. I don't think it's cut and dry, especially since this is these are good agencies. This is a good agency that does a lot of hard work for us. But do other board members have opinions? Go ahead, Sarah.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's great on the, I don't know what agency it is, just to preface that. I think it's great that the agency is asking. You can always ask, but sometimes, you might just say no. I don't think it's a great idea for us to say, sure, we're going to go ahead and put you on the ballot for more than you've already done, than you've already been on the ballot before. So I think we've already set the precedent of having somebody come forward with the mayoral thing, with signing petition. I'm not in favor of having somebody put something on a petition without having something on the ballot without a new petition. So I don't think that we should go ahead and do that.
Okay, good. Thanks for your thoughts there. Jeannie, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think it is unfortunate that it's playing out this way, but I agree with Sarah and with you. We took a hard look at what we required of agencies to be on the ballot a couple years ago, and we removed some of the hoops that seemed like they were just hoops and there was no particular reason. In other words, we stopped making organizations go out every 2 to 3 years and get signatures again just to stay on the ballot. That felt like if the voters were voting yes every year to a certain amount, then they were getting voter approval. And it felt like I felt really strongly that we needed to get rid of that requirement because it didn't serve any purpose. But I do think initially when you want to be on the ballot, and if you want to change, if you want to increase the amount, it does feel like we need the voters to sign a petition to say, yeah, we agree that this organization is doing good work and that we think that they should be on the ballot or have an increased amount of money on the ballot. So I can't see any way it would be fair. I think we would have to open it up to all organizations that are on the ballot already. And then it's a slippery slope. What about people that want to be on the ballot for the first time and they were planning to get petitions this year and couldn't because of COVID? It feels like it's too complicated and it's very last minute for us to figure out how to do this. So I have to oppose it.
Okay, thank you, Jeannie. Go ahead, Jean.
I agree with Jeannie, Donald, and Sarah. And I guess I feel like also, in addition to what, the precedent has been set, if you really want, if an agency really wants to get signatures, there are ways to get signatures that don't require face-to-face. I sign petitions all the time that are just left in places of business. So there is that option where they can gather signatures without physically having to walk up to people and ask for them.
Yeah, and acknowledging, of course, this board acknowledges that it is harder, as is everything during COVID. Everything is harder, but so is paying your taxes. So everything is kind of in that category. Any last thoughts from Jim or Bruce? No? Okay. Yeah. Jean, did you have something else you were trying to say?
I just have a comment on the policy. I believe last year, and this may be inappropriate to ask this question now. You may want me to wait.
I'm gonna have to hear a little more before I tell you.
All I want to add is under, let's see, 1, 2, 3, via the ballot. It says agencies are also invited to present. I thought we had changed that to like strongly encouraged to present at the March annual town meeting, or stronger language. It wasn't really optional. We expect them to be there.
Expected would be fine.
If I can answer that question, I think yes. In fact, Jeannie had asked that be amended. Unfortunately, we sent this out relatively quickly, so it felt like we'd have to send out a second memorandum with stronger wording in it. But you've made the point, Jean. I think
it's a good point. Let's just face it, this is going to be an imperfect town meeting this year, no matter what happens. Either it's going to be very strange, or it's going to be on very distant, or it's going to be on Zoom, or we don't know yet. And the Secretary of State hasn't given us a lot of guidance on that. I think they're quite mixed about that. So we have some research to do on that front. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say on that, Stuart. But Dane, our new legislator, was helpful in getting some initial comments on that. So I think the policy stands. I don't know if we feel like we need to take a vote on this, but if there is a motion to change the policy at this point, I would accept it. Not hearing any, Stuart, I think we are sticking with the policy and continuing with what we've got. I realize that bringing it in front of the whole board may have been a little bit more than was needed, but I do feel like in this particular situation, it might have been worth it. Go ahead, Sarah.
Sure. I just want to say, you can always ask, but sometimes it's not going to fly.
Yep, can always ask. Good reminder. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart, for bringing that. We have a penalty waiver proposal. Would you like to tell us what you've got there?
Sure. As you know, and I think I've indicated a couple of times that we have been approached by a number of taxpayers, both commercial and residential, concerned for the problems they had in paying their full tax bill this year, principally due to issues related to or surrounding COVID. The finance director, collections director, and I sat down and talked a little bit about how we might approach this. And what I am proposing here is that for first-time delinquent taxpayers within the last 5 years, that we consider a waiver of the penalty for the 2020 taxes only. In the case of residential customers, they would need to enter into an agreement to pay the entire delinquency within 12 months. At the end of that 12-month period, if they are successful, the waiver, the penalty would be waived. For commercial customers and multifamily customers who are delinquent within the first 5 years, we would look for them to provide a COVID impact statement of some kind. I don't have a feel for what it might be, and that they would enter into an agreement to eliminate the delinquency within a 6-month period. At the end of that period, if they satisfy the agreement, the penalty would then be waived. So it's not essentially a giveaway to everybody. You do have to come to us. You do have to work with us on an agreement to get the delinquency resolved. And at the present time, we're looking at 141 properties that fall into that category. The total penalty, if all of it was waived at the end of that time frame, would be about $54,500. I'm looking, I am the tax collector and the delinquent tax collector, one by charter, the other by vote of the people some years ago. I don't know that I'm looking for you to vote to approve this, but I did want you to know that we were going to offer it. And unless you have a strong objection, I would like to notify the taxpayers who are involved that they do have an opportunity to work off their delinquency and therefore avoid the penalty for 2020.
Yeah, on board, I think it's great that the managers come to us with a proactive proposal. You know, this is something that can really affect people. He says he doesn't need a vote, but I might like to offer, this is money. This is real money that we're talking about. This is allocation of resources. I might like to just make sure that we, that the whole board is in on this if he's making this decision, so that he's not feeling like he's making it without our support. So I might expect that at the end. But first, let's take comment from Mr. Jim Carroll and then Bruce Lee Clark.
Stu, can you explain why there's a difference between the residential and commercial terms from 12 months to 6 months?
Well, my thought process was that the commercial or multifamily customer most likely has a source of income or an option to acquire CARES funding much perhaps more easily than a residential customer might. So I thought the 6-month time frame would be sufficient to allow them to do that. I'm not wed to that. If you think we ought to play by the same rule in both categories, I don't have a problem with that.
I absolutely do, because this disproportionately, the hospitality industry, restaurants, lodgings are deeply, deeply affected. And I think it should be equal on both fronts.
I appreciate that comment, Jim.
Jim, would you feel the same way if it was a multi-million-dollar box store coming in?
No.
So where do you draw the line?
I would draw the line at businesses that whose revenues are $5 to $10 million or less. Regular gross revenues. Or somewhere along those lines.
I would be concerned about delving into people's business financing opportunities, which is why we took this as those who were first-time delinquent within the last 5 years. It means they've been good taxpayers. They've paid their property taxes on a regular basis, and rather than delve too deeply into their business debts and business practices, I would just assume they just show proof that COVID had an impact, however they might do that. And then we enter into an agreement. And if it's 12 months, I'm fine with that. I'm not going to differentiate in my own mind between a potential very wealthy customer who had problems or someone who's just barely getting by who had problems.
More to the point of Donald's question, the statute, as it was written, to the best of my recollection, Stu, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, did not differentiate between a $20 million business or a $500,000 business. Is that correct?
That's correct. As I recall it, that's correct.
Well, let me cut to the chase, Stuart. There's 141 properties. Everybody else has paid their taxes on that list. Is there anything that would put such a hole in our finances that we would have trouble moving forward with that hole in our tax revenues?
It is a substantial sum of money if everybody takes advantage of it. And there may be people who, once they make that application, either they fail to keep the agreement or they can't provide sufficient reason. We would consider them. But we generally generate a little over $100,000 a year in penalties from a given tax year. So 54,000 is a substantial sum of money.
Mm-hmm.
But by having it waived at the end of the period, it allows us, I think, to absorb this loss on a continuing basis. And if 12 months from now, would probably have much less of an impact than it would have if we were to do it on day one.
Okay, Sarah, I cut in front of you, Bruce. Let's go to Bruce and then Jeannie. Sorry, Bruce and then Jean.
Stu, just for those who are newbies on this and who are not as well attuned to tax delinquency and penalties, can you just give the public a general sense of what we're talking about when we're talking about penalties for non-payment of, let's say, a $2,000 tax bill?
Statutory penalty is 8%. And that penalty is applied the first day after the delinquency begins. It doesn't change. And there is interest that accrues as the delinquency stretches out. We're not talking about eliminating the interest on the penalty, but on the taxes, but this might be a way to at least give some people some relief.
Right. Thank you. I wanted that distinction to be made. So that's helpful. Thank you.
Jean.
Okay.
I think there were others that were ahead of me, but I'm happy to go.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. I like the fact that we're compassionate and we're going to I hope we do this. But we just had a discussion about precedent setting, and I guess I'm just curious, Stuart, based on what we're hearing, I don't think 2021 or, we don't know how long this is going to go on, and these people or different people may be in a similar situation next fiscal year. So have you given any thought about that?
I have, and I think that's a bridge we cross when we come to it. I am somewhat more concerned about next year than this year. We saw fairly regular payments this year. We had the stimulus package that helped a number of people perhaps make those payments. If the federal government fails to act with additional stimulus over the next several months, I think we could see a situation that might be much worse than this next year. But I would not want to speculate that it's going to be that way. It's just, that's my concern. And I think it's imperative that as the board and as the individual charged with delinquent collections, that we take a hard look at that time.
Yeah, I guess my only other comment would be, and you're probably going to do this, is just make it very clear that this is hopefully a one-time deal.
We will make sure that we get that word to them.
Yeah, and this is not forgiving the amounts. This is acknowledging that it's COVID and giving a small number of people a bit of time to pay those amounts in full. These are people who have already not paid their taxes. So at this point, better to work with them than against them. So I think it's a good proposal, but I would like the board to give Stuart either a vote of approval or not, whether or not he needs it. I think it's a pretty big financial deal, and I would like to know how the board feels about this.
Are you asking for a vote, or are you?
I'd
just-
like a motion to support the manager's proposal, I think.
I would make that motion.
Okay, Sarah,
I'll second
are you
it.
seconding it, or are you asking a question, Sarah? You're muted. Oh, she's stuck.
Oh.
Raise two hands. Oh, there you go.
So there was a lot of input that people were mentioning that I already was going to voice, but I think this is great. I'm glad that you're doing this, that you proposed this. I'm just wondering, maybe, as Jim mentioned, that for commercial customers, maybe, something about the same thing. Like you mentioned, it's hard to delineate where that cutoff is of how much businesses make, because what they make and what they really make isn't really the same thing at all. So and maybe for residential customers, maybe that COVID impact statement might be something as well.
It's also true that we're going through the hardest part of the business year through the winter now. So the next 6 months is not a revenue catch-up time for most businesses. The revenue catch-up time, if there was one, would be next summer. So yeah, maybe somebody would like to support this with that one change that Jim has suggested.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've already made that change, Donald.
Okay. So so we're amending the motion to make the commercial eliminate delinquency for 12 months for both.
That's right.
Okay.
Just to support the
Equal
manager's
time.
proposal. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
All right.
equal time.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Any-
just,
Go ahead, Sarah.
and I don't know if this is even something you might want to consider, but I just was thinking, you don't want to pry too much, like you mentioned, but a question might be to ask if they'd received CARES money or something to that effect.
I
Not
think that
sure.
that
Just
should
thought
be,
I'd ask.
It's irrelevant.
I think that, by and large, everybody, including, residential folks, have gotten some form of CARES assistance. So I really think that ought to be irrelevant. If people are struggling, they're struggling.
If the manager says he can live with 12 months, I'd say let's go with his recommendation.
That's good.
Can someone
do that.
second that motion?
Do I have a second? Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jean. We have a second and a third. All right. Barring any further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Stuart, we didn't need to vote on that, but we support you doing this. We think it's good thinking, and it's a tough time for a lot of people. Thank you for working this through.
Well, I appreciate your support. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the manager's report. Oh, wait. Yeah, I have somebody in the waiting room. I'm going to let them in just for, we've already voted, but caller ending in 840. I've just entered you into the Bennington Select Board meeting. If you'd like to say anything, please press *6 to unmute and then join us. Maybe not. This is a number that's been coming in and out of the meeting. It may be a Zoom problem, but it's one I recognize. He's a friendly participant. So, Sam, if you can hear us, you're welcome to join us if you would like to. Press *6. If not, I'm going to put you back in the waiting room. Okay, we're going to move on. Stuart, we're going to move to the manager's report. What have you got for us tonight?
Yes, just one action item, and that is the application for the lead line borrowing. This is a process that the state of Vermont has asked us to follow. One of the unique things of this application, and this is the one that's the no payment, essentially a grant of $11 million to help us replace private lead service lines throughout the community. They have combined the step 2, which is final design, and step 3, construction, into the one application. And normally they would look for this to be presented to the entire board. But of course, given that we're meeting by Zoom, they will accept an authorization to allow the chair to sign the application. So it's a relatively straightforward process. We just need a motion to authorize the chair to sign. That gets us into the process and gets the effort has already been concluded, or almost all, and this would get us to final design and construction. So we'd be starting to see some effort probably next spring.
Donald, may I?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Just a reminder, Stu, for the general public who may not have been aware of where this money is coming from. This, in fact, is not a loan. It's not a bond in the classic sense that we're going to have to pay it back. This is coming from the state and the feds for the removal of lead lines. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
100% reimbursement to get after lead lines. What's wrong with that? There shouldn't be.
No, I just
This
don't
should-
want there to be any misunderstanding.
Oh no, I'm backing you up, Jim. Thank you for. Yes, that's a good point.
I'd make a motion to authorize the chair to sign the application.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Bruce. Any further discussion about a ton of money coming into our community to fix lead lines on private property?
More than
Okay,
10
all-
million, more than
All
10
in favor,
million.
please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. No extensions. All right, thank you, MSK. So
Yes, and it's been quite an effort, and I'll throw a little bit of a bone to our good friend Joey Culkin, who started a process some time ago arguing that the town should be paying much more attention to the lead lines that exist in the community. But this principally arose from the Flint, Michigan situation, where they switched their water system and turned out introducing very acidic water into a system which became very corrosive and really poisoned quite a few people. Anyway, I'm not gonna, I mean, I have a few other things to say, but I don't think, given the late hour, that there anything that people don't know and haven't heard before.
COVID, we all know it's bad. We all know we need to take care of things. It's going to be a tough winter, but we've got to get through it. Thank you, Stuart, for that. Agenda setting, I think my question for the board, so Jeannie, we have a little list going, I don't have it right in front of me, but we have a little list going for our next meeting. It is a funny meeting. It's kind of between Christmas and New Year's. Are people traveling? Are people going to be around for that meeting? Are people traveling? Do people wish they were traveling? All right. So everybody's up for a Zoom board meeting on December 28th? What the
Why
heck?
not?
Why not? Ho, ho, ho.
Well, we do need to meet, because I will need to have you approve the warning for the annual town meeting and the budget. So we do need to meet, and I'm told that the police department does have some training issues that they would like to speak to the board about.
Okay.
Having to do with fair and impartial policing, community engaged policing, those kinds of issues on some of the training that they have received of late. So they would like to make that presentation before the year end.
Okay.
That's great. Do we
Anything
have,
else that has to be on that meeting that we know of?
I'm going to try to keep it short, Donald, if I can.
Okay. And
As
is
far
your
as I know right now, there's nothing that has to be there except the warning, and the police would like to be there.
are we going to have a little time with budgets before we have to What's your thought?
What our budget process generally involves the first 3 Saturdays in January. So
Right.
I hope to have my packet to you. I've just started my budget presentation. I'm a little late this year. We've got, I forgot, we have Steve Love also making a brief presentation on the audit on December 28th. But Melissa's been working very hard to try to bring the audit in during December. It's slowed us down a little bit. COVID, of course, makes it somewhat difficult to work through some of the issues in the budgets, but my presentation will be completed this week if I am lucky. And we'll be able to get that to you before the 28th. So you'll have the New Year's weekend to go over it and familiarize yourself with the budget.
Great.
Well, it's something to do when you can't go out to dinner or anything. I mean,
no, I like to have plenty of time. Thank you. That's great. All right. We're going to move into other business. If people would just indulge me, I know we want to get this meeting done, but on Friday, Governor Scott did make an announcement about some CDBG and CDBG CARES grants that went out. You know, there were 19 grants that were awarded around the state, and 4 of them came to Bennington. And that was over about $600,000, which is, you know, something like 20% of the money that went to the whole state came here. And I just want to make a shout out to town staff, I think in particular Shannon Barsotti, for really working hard to get a lot of grant applications out there and bring money into the town that will do some very important work. And so it's great when that works. And I really love the fact that we have a very competent staff that is able to take advantage of opportunities like this. Stuart, and please pass on our gratitude to Shannon for her particular efforts on that.
Will do.
Also, just you probably read my editorial, but we can't get through tonight without just saying what a great healthcare center we have. Southern Vermont Healthcare Center is an awesome community partner. If we had an award for Best Community Partner of the Year, I think we would have to give it to them for 2020 and maybe 2021 too. So that would be my one thing for tonight. Other business, go ahead, people. What Bruce, what have you got? Anything?
Nothing other than wishing everybody happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas.
All right, Jean.
Yeah, I just, another shout out to Shannon. I was back on Franklin Lane, just looking behind the Putnam project, and I know the work isn't even done, and she's wrote a grant for that, but it looks fantastic back there. And it's so exciting to see the work being done on the John Hale's house on the corner of Pleasant and Valentine. Oh my gosh, it's so wonderful. So both of those things happened because of Shannon.
Great, Jeannie.
Well, I just want to say, if you haven't seen the new beautiful Belly's Deli, definitely walk by there. They have done an amazing job on the facade. It is incredible. And the colors are beautiful as well. So that's it.
Excellent. Jim, what you got?
Just wishing everybody a happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas. It's been quite a year, and you know, I've generally over the last 10 or 15 years have not stayed up for to ring in the new year, but I am this year to make sure that 2020 gets the hell out of here.
Well said. Sarah?
Happy holidays, everybody. I think my dinner's on the table, so ready to head out of this meeting.
All right, great. Well, Stuart and Dan, thank you very much. Cat TV, thank you for airing us tonight. Nancy Lively, thank you for taking minutes. I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank